I think there's been a massive shift away from that one size fits all to a variety of different solutions, depending on what your mobility need is.
Welcome to our Take Charge of Change podcast series, where LEXperts cover everything you need to know about making your fleet fit for the future. And in this episode, we're discussing how the changes in work and social patterns are influencing future fleets. Can I ask you, with the social value changes, and how is that changing the way you run your fleet in today's world?
Yeah, I think there's a few angles to this. You've got a lot more people now that's coming into the company that are younger and live in city centres, and they don't fundamentally want to have a car. Yeah. So they're looking at some more sustainable and social means of travel. And I think that's why companies, to attract the people, not one size fits all anymore. No. Companies need to offer this flexibility. Yeah. Because, it is a very attractive thing to have a car, but not everybody wants it. I think you've still got your high business mileage. They have to have a car because they're doing that. Yeah, and it needs to be a car through a lease company, so it's properly maintained. Yes. Health and safety is so important. Yeah. And then there's obviously more sustainable things like a transport allowance. Yeah. They take the cash, but they can use it to get the train, or, what I mean? Yeah.
I think you're finding more people are coming out of the cash allowance scenario and going back to company car allowance, do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Over the last 12 months, 80% of the new starters that's coming into Siemens that have a choice, not the high business mileage drivers, but, the low have a choice, are coming back into the scheme. So, 8 out of 10 people are coming back into the company car, but they can only have an electric vehicle.
Sustainability has a lot involvement now in changing the way people decide on what type of vehicle that they run, or if they want a vehicle or not. I think that's at the forefront of people's minds now, isn't it? Social value is a big piece on tendering nowadays, whereas before it was all about cost and description, whereas social value is included in that now, because people want to, particularly in public sector, people want to support local businesses, local suppliers, and assist the general population within that decision.
I think that's a really important point you make, because what you're also seeing in the environment of our customers, when they're tendering for business, there's a massive amount of pressure on them to achieve social responsibility goals and targets. Otherwise, they won't be considered for the work that's on offer. And so that drives a lot of the decision in what fleet you operate, because obviously fleet is one of the largest carbon emitters. And so that drives the social agenda to say, right, unless we clean our own act up, we're not going to be able to tender for business. That impacts our profitability. Yeah, I think the consumer expectation piece is quite diverse, because it depends also what sector you are operating in as a business. What we're seeing is there's massive growth in certain sectors of the market, and what that's driving is a real resource scarcity for employers. And they've got to then scale up their offer in terms of package, but also reward, which the car forms part of, to attract and retain the best talent to fulfill the roles they've got to fulfill. And cost is less of an option there. They've got to spend money to invest, to attract, to retain, to grow their own business. And then you've seen other ends in certain sectors of the market where it is absolutely cost driven, especially in the retail space. And it's probably less consumer focused there, and it's just about how do we drive cost out of the business and pulling away from that attractiveness of a vehicle offer, because that's the need of the business, and so there's less focus in that social space, and it's far more driven about it from a cost agenda perspective.
Consumer demand is ever changing, and fleet is ever changing at a rapid pace, so we have to keep up to those demands. So from a Lex perspective, offering a different solution, whether it's a company car scheme, whether it's a used car scheme, whether it's PCP, we have to adapt and really respond to customer requests and demands.
The landscape's totally changed. Now as a fleet manager, you still got to look at the costs. You want to make sure you've got an attractive scheme, but you also want to make sure that you've got that you're putting vehicles on there that's also attractive, an attractive cost to the employee. So it's balancing both sides. I look at it, balancing the cost to the company and balancing, the attractiveness. Yeah. So it's that balancing act it's got to.
Like you say, it's ever changing.
It's ever changing. Absolutely, yeah.
Remote working has driven a complete change in how people just engage with each other. Everybody's got used to now not having to physically meet as much, and therefore they're using other mediums to communicate. So the mileages that company fleets travel massively reduced.
Yeah.
I think there's been a massive shift away from that one size fits all to a variety of different solutions, depending on what your mobility need is. And that'll change over time. And I think we've seen that change really dramatically impact the company car itself, because people are saying, there is a choice now. Do I take a company car, or do I look at some of the other ways that I can get around that, some of the things you spoke about earlier, Wayne, which was that.
Yeah, and I think the changes we've done more in the last 12 months than we did in probably the other 3 years combined. Yeah, so that shows you, the speed of change and the size of change, what we've had to do, bringing transport allowance in and things like this. Gone are the days now where you'd review your policy, every 3-4 years. Even a year is a year enough now. You know what I mean? Yeah, we've just done loads of work putting all this change in, 9-month project. Yeah, with lots of people, and that's finished. And our CFOs now, they want to know, well, what's next? Yeah. Whereas in the past, they'd say, you've done this now. You've done a great job. You can relax for a few years. Well, no. They want to know. What's coming. What do we need to do, and why they're doing it, because they want to make sure it's cost effective for both sides, and it's meeting the ESG agenda now and going forward. Yeah. Some things happen out of the blue. Some things we can predict. So I think that's why companies need to. And fleet managers really need to keep the finger on the pulse.
It's like we've said, isn't it? It's ever changing.
Yeah, gone are the days where you'd give somebody a diesel car and a fuel card. I'd love to have worked in the fleet manager in them days. Whereas look at it now, it's totally different. Yeah. The roles of a fleet manager and what you need to do,
varied.
Totally different than when it was 2, 3, 4 years ago. Certainly 10 years ago.
And it's going to change again, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You've just got to adapt, haven't you, as and when it arises.
Yes. All the OEMs are now focusing on the electric cars to meet the ZEV mandate. So there's a big chunk there of OEM support, and then the employees have got the benefit in kind. So we've done awareness training with yourselves, so all our drivers, we do renewal calls to actually explain all these different cost levers.
Salary sacrifice is far more prevalent than it's ever been, and growing, as people find it's a really alternative option and a really cost-effective option. I think also because OEMs are not putting as many vehicles into the market at heavily discounted prices, that sort of personal contract hire, personal contract purchase position has got a lot less in volume, because the cost isn't there anymore. The cheap deals are kind of gone. And that's forcing a lot of people back into having to look at their mobility in a different way. The solution we've tried to offer to the market is that used electric vehicle piece, where the cost provision of that is now far less, and it's a great solution for someone who doesn't necessarily crave a brand new car, but craves a cost-effective solution that does the same job. So I think it's just getting that range of solutions at different price points to allow consumers more choice, and ultimately drive down the cost. So you're not just providing one thing at one price. You've got a range of solutions at a range of costs.
And I suppose a lot of the second-hand cars, because people have been travelling less in the last 3 or 4 years, you can get a good second-hand, electric car 4 years old with 25,000 miles on there.
Say 5 years ago, the fleet manager was just looking at maybe a contract hire scheme for a certain number of drivers, whereas now the option is for the whole business, if you like, and there's a lot of solutions out there to accommodate what we have within Lex Autolease, is to accommodate that type of business where you have got different solutions that require different requirements. Wayne, can you tell me what role of technology has within your business?
I think technology's coming more into play for the van fleet. So the first thing is it's very important that we manage that business mileage in a controlled manner. And this is where, telematics is absolutely key. A lot of the vans go home at night, and a lot of people don't want to put the vans on the driveway, or they haven't got a driveway, and so on. And the cost of charging and everything else. So this is where data and technology is coming in, because businesses need to start somewhere. And data gives you that. But it's a combination of the data from the vehicles. So, what's the driving patterns? How long are they driving? What's the ranges and so on? Is it lots of stop start and so on? So you've got all this masses of data from the telematics provider. But then what you need to do is overlay that with the human side and sort of where the person lives. So you in a way you've got to do your low hanging fruit. I see this is what we're doing. So you
got
look
to be
at
selective.
You've got to be selective, really. And the last thing you want to do is do a massive cost investment in terms of electric vans and it fails at day one. So you've really got to use this. So it's a combination
you've
of
got to bring your drivers on board.
So you've got vehicle data and you've got individual driver data. So have they got a driveway? Do they want an electric? And it's pulling. That's what we've done. You have to pull this together and model it. So when you do go at your low hanging fruit, you know that they're going to be successful, and you can use them as the champions and the horn blowers.
There's a big part telematics and technology plays in cost reduction, but I think there's also some simpler solutions whereby, because the cost of everything is increased massively over the last 3 or 4 years, what we're seeing as some options now is just don't renew, which sounds counterintuitive to, a leasing company might say, we want you to renew all your vehicles all the time. The reality is the right thing for the customer is the cost-effective solution. So why don't you just keep what you've got, run it on for longer, because the mileages that we anticipated are not being achieved. So you can keep what you've got, run it for longer at a more cost-effective price point.
I think that the consultancy side, you've got a lot of what you do to help us. The data you've got helps your consultants advise us on what's right for the policy and so on.
Benchmarking is a big part of that. One of the benefits of the scale and fleet size of Lex Autolease is the data lake that we can pull from. And what we're finding businesses and industries are looking at is, how good am I compared to my peer group? That's what we want to know. Am I in a good space? Am I not in a good space? And I think what we've got the advantage of having, because we've got so much data accessible, and we always can have at least 5 or 6 similar businesses in a sector to compare against. It's allowing that benchmarking piece across all financials and operational statistics that says, where am I doing really well? Where am I doing not so well? And what else can I do to improve that? And where do I want to be? Do I want to be leading the pack? Do I want to be mid-pack? But without that data provision, you're never going to know.
No.
So what we're seeing is that massive draw on that benchmarking requirement and benchmarking service, just so companies can have the comfort to understand their current position. Is that something you've understood? And
absolutely. And I think absolutely 100% use it. And maybe a lot of the benchmarking in the past might have been cost benchmarking, whereas now it's CO2 and carbon, and how are you compared with your other customers that you've got. And so I actually use that and present that back at my internal senior stakeholder QBRs, because I want to be on the front foot to show that what we're doing and all these policy changes and so on, that we're up there at the best. And so that's something that's probably been doing for the last year plus, where we're getting this data from Lex, and we're actually comparing that at very top level. The stakeholders in our business love it because they want to know.
So I think that's one of the advantages of having the biggest data lake in the industry. It's giving that average position, which allows you to be confident that the data set is valid, and it's not just comparing with somebody else, some other random business in somebody else, somewhere else in the country that you might not be relevant. So I think from our point of view, we're really proud to be able to demonstrate that on a ongoing basis. And as the fleet grows, the data becomes even more rich.
If you look at the social value and, you know, ESG and so on, you know, sustainability is part of ESG. These were things that weren't on, you know, the agenda of most companies, you know, 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. And probably now 80% of what we're doing is to, you know, is to meet the ESG targets that's been set.
From a social value perspective, and we have contacts up and down the country where we can demonstrate where we are looking at social value and helping different customers and providers, and it's something that we are then reporting back on through our tender process to show customers that we are working up and down the country to assist them on their social value journey, really.
And I think one of the things that we have rolled out for the last probably 2.5 years is that sustainability tool for fleets, where we're predicting at what point in time you're going to hit your net zero position. And I think that's something that has been really well received, because it allows corporates to adjust their policies if that position looks like it's too far away and it's not hitting the right criteria for your own particular business. We can then adjust what we're going to do with the fleet to bring that net zero target date further forward.
But as long as we're working in partnership to get you to that point, I think that's what Lex can provide. We hope you found this episode helpful. Look out for the other episodes in the series.